Ryan, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I do appreciate you taking the time to do this. So first things first, just want to check in with you. How's your day going so far?
It's pretty good, you know. I Monday is kind of like my regular person Sunday, so I get to sleep in and I kind of get kind of a chill day and just kind of in the studio right now and doing some content creating. You know, I do a lot of my filming on Mondays and uh, just stuff like that. So that's kind of what I'm up to today.
It's not so much a day off then.
Yeah, not so much. I guess so, but to me, when I can just chill out and do my own work on my own stuff, that's like kind of a day off for me, you know?
Absolutely. It's fantastic. Well, a few weeks into 2024, just over 2 weeks, in fact. Have you been keeping busy?
Yeah, I have just a couple like random projects. Unfortunately, I'm in between, in the video game world with my composing job, which is kind of like my, I guess I would call it my main gig, but it's kind of like a bit more than a part-time gig. So I'm in between projects right now. So this is the time where I just kind of catch up on other little things that I've been doing with people. So like, for example, I'm like mixing and mastering a song for somebody. I'm and just little things like that. Also just writing some stuff and getting things ready for my own band and things like that. So, you know.
Basically, in a continuation, I guess, from what you've been doing last year and so on, it just keeps rolling on. New year just means more stuff and hopefully more stuff
Exactly.
coming up.
Never stops really, you know.
Well, when you looking to the year just gone, 2023, when you reflect on that year as a whole, are you satisfied with what you kind of managed to accomplish that year, last year in your professional life?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was a pretty crazy year. All in all, it was like I did a lot of different gigs, and my one of my original bands started kind of picking up, and we got management and booking agent and all that stuff. And I also had like this social media extravaganza where I just started taking off kind of on my Instagram page. So I've been like motivated to do things, like I said, like I'm filming videos today, like I've been motivated to do things like that. So 2023 was definitely like a turning point. I also was in a living situation and moved to a new state and all that, moved in with my girlfriend. So big life change and all that. So it definitely was a turning point type of year for me, I would say, you know?
How did you keep your head together? There's a lot of spinning plates there.
Yeah, totally, totally. It was a lot. But I'm like one of those guys that just likes to take on a lot of things. I think people know that I always take on way more than I can handle and
Hmm.
never ask for help and all that. That's the kind of. So, but yeah, I mean, it's just to me, I like keeping busy is kind of like a key of life to me. I just like it helps me stay like energized and focused. And if I'm sitting around doing nothing and just like sitting on the couch, or it's like I feel like lost. I'll become a total like, what am I doing? I got to do, I have one of those brains constantly moving and all that. So I like to just channel it into just getting stuff done, So,
You almost make it sound like boredom for yourself would almost be a dangerous thing.
oh yeah, that's like hell to me is the being bored to death.
But you must have those moments where you are able to switch off. Is there something you do, something you manage to kind of be able to just switch off?
Yeah, so and actually this past year has been very good for me in that I've picked up kind of like in the morning I'll and I used to do this and I kind of fell off of it and we go through as musicians we kind of go through these mental ups and downs I think and so for a long time I was just so focused on gigs and working and finding jobs and blah blah blah, blah that I wasn't like focused on my own mental health and all that. So this past year I really got into like I'll wake up early in the morning and like do some breathing and some meditating. And I just started like kind of doing, I'm a very, very beginner, but I started like experimenting with yoga and stuff. And, but I like to exercise too. So I've been the last year, I've just been like really pushing myself to like wake up, let's try to wake up at 8 a.m., 8:30, 9 a.m., even if it's 9, whatever, and just like work out for 45 minutes before I get on my phone and look at my emails and my Instagram. So that's very like helpful for me. And it's totally changed my perspective in a good way for sure. So
That's fantastic. It does sound like you've got a nice, healthy balance going on right now.
yeah, thanks. Yeah, it feels that way.
Well, again, right, so sticking to 2023 and that year in a whole, do you have any personal specific highlights of what you accomplished that year?
Oh yeah, tons. I mean, the biggest one is that I put out my first solo album, which I had never done. I've always worked with bands and collaborated with other musicians, which of course I love to do, but I've always, since I was like a teenager and started the music journey, I've always wanted to make my own kind of solo album and be like have a solo career, so to speak.
Mhm.
So that 2023 was kind of like me launching that idea, So I released a full album, and I released a single on top of that later, about I think 6 months after I put the album out. Um, so yeah, so those were two big milestones for me, and then also just all the stuff I was still also doing with the other bands and the video game projects I was working on. I mean, those are all big occurrences to me, and when they finish, it's like this big weights lifted off my shoulders and all that. So those are some of
Mm.
the big achievements I would say of last year.
Well, you mentioned it, so I'll go a little bit more into it. Of course, you did, as you said, release your debut solo album, Music That Makes No Sense, Volume
That's right.
1. And then later in the year, at the end of the year, the new track, Elephant Battle. Are you happy with how both were received generally?
Oh yeah, actually the album kind of I released it before I had this little social media explosion. And it was one of the best responses I had gotten prior to, that stuff. So I was very thrilled that, like, when I started promoting it and telling people, hey, I'm coming out with an album. And I think that there's something to, I know that there's a lot of nonsense with Spotify, and like, I think at one point the CEO was saying that you should only release singles from now on or something like that. Which I kind of like have this. I'm not sure if I believe that yet, because I've
Mm.
released singles and I've released albums. And when you release an album, it's like a big to do. And I think more people kind of tune in to that. And you get a little more press and you get a little more like attention from releasing a bigger
Yeah.
project. And also, I just love albums. I love how they flow and arc and all that. And I like the stories that are told within them. Um, so, I think the response was generally pretty awesome. And I was quite happy with how it was received. I got a lot of comments, a lot of messages from friends and fellow musicians that said, they really enjoyed what I did. So can't beat that.
Absolutely. Did you notice a bigger or different response to Elephant Battle, considering that came after the social media explosion?
Yeah. I would say it was different because at that point, people like strangers were following me and strangers were commenting. Whereas previously it was mostly like, I would say 70 to 80% people that I knew were uh, responding to the video. So in a way, I got a little more of a response from the album. Uh, and whereas the Elephant Battle definitely got a great response, which it's like two different kinds of responses. I think, it's like having strangers that have never heard me before. I mean, that's like the greatest thing on earth. That's all I've ever wanted, is for strangers to be moved or touched by
Mm.
my music and all that. Um, but I will say Elephant Battle is definitely like a niche thing. The album's a little more like listener friendly, even though it's all instrumental music. But people like my mom would listen to my album. My mom probably wouldn't listen to Elephant Battle. You know what I mean?
Fair
So
enough.
there's that aspect of it. But yeah, generally, the response was very good, and yeah, I was very very happy with how the track came. I mean, most importantly, I'm like, the responses are awesome, and I love the support, and I love that people are listening to it. But I'm always just in my head. I'm making the music to hope that I'm happy with how it came
Yeah.
out, and I think I was pretty happy with how both the album and the single came out. That single specifically, I was very happy with the end product. So
You want to love it first.
what's that?
You want to love it first.
Yeah, exactly.
Of the two responses, the response to the album, response to Elephant Battle, the single, I have to ask, based really, I guess, on the social media side of things, which one felt more genuine to you?
Hmm. Interesting. I'd have to say the album probably. Uh, that was a more there was a lot of like congratulatory type of things, and people called me like a friend of mine, a keyboard player that I hadn't played with in like, you know, 6 or 7 years, just called me out of the blue and was just like, dude, I just listened to your album. It's so sick. Like, I love this track number 4. It's so awesome. I'm just like,
Oh
and
yeah.
he puts it on in the background and he's rocking to, or, we're FaceTiming. And I'm like, dude, that's so awesome. Like, it's amazing.
And there's
Uh,
no reason for him to have to do that.
no,
So
not at
it's
all. Not at
genuine.
all. Not at all. So that was definitely a more, I would say, I guess, a more genuine response, you could say. Sure. Yep.
And do you think you've learned any lessons from both releases? I mean, in regards to, say, promotion and getting airplay and getting noticed outside of your own personal circles.
Yeah, I suppose. The first album I didn't hire a publicist or anything, and I just kind of put it out there and hoped for the best. And because it was also like this lingering, like some of the songs were very old on that, like I had recorded them like 10 years ago, and I rehashed them and revamped them and whatever. Um, so it was kind of like this. I just want to get this out and move on and create new music and get these old pieces that I've had like out into the world, so I can
Hmm.
free my brain of them and create more stuff. Um, so I guess yeah, like I said, I didn't really hire anyone for publicity, and but it still went pretty okay with it doing my own thing. And then Elephant Battle, I did hire a publicist. Shout out to my man Tom over there who scheduled our interview, and that's really been awesome too, because that's like I haven't done a lot of these kind of interview situations, and I really like to do them, and it's fun for me, and I love to speak my mind about the music, and I'm glad that interviewers like yourself are somewhat interested in what I'm doing and all that. So it feels awesome to do this, and it's definitely something that I want to do and plan to do more often, is to hire someone like Tom or a publicist uh, to do these kinds of things, because that all
Hmm.
these little micro interviews and stuff like that, they all add up and they all help in some way or another. So
Well, yeah, it's just trying to get your name out there as much as humanly possible, particularly overseas and into, say where I'm in the UK and we're talking here right
yep,
now, and it's spreading your name as a chance just for people to get to know you and maybe check out, say,
exactly.
a single on Spotify.
Yep, yep, exactly. And it's a real human interaction a lot of times these days. I can't stand that like get Spotify playlist, promote your out, do this, and you never talk to anyone. You just send an
Hmm.
email or you pay $50 and like you never know if anything. It's like, at least I know that I'm getting my money's worth by paying a publicist because I'm talking to another human in an interview right now. So it's
Yes, yes.
that
With all
feels a
that
lot
play,
better to me than just giving some company $50 that says they're gonna, get me on a Spotify playlist. So.
with all that Spotify playlist and that stuff, is as annoying as it is, it's almost part of the game now. It's
Oh
almost
yeah,
part of something
of
you have to
course.
play. Are
Yes.
do you have a certain level of comfortability with that side of things, having to, as you say, be social media savvy and understand algorithms and so on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't deny that it's part of what we're dealing with right now. And but you know what, to me it's like, and again, I only live from my experiences growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s, and seeing how it's evolved from Napster or from CDs or cassette tapes, blah 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 and all that. So it's like, I think you just have to change with the times, because it's always been, I mean, music is so young. It's like when you think about it, rock and roll, I mean, it's only from the 50s, that they could, or
Mm,
the 20s, 30s is when they could actually make recordings. So we're talking about something that's like barely even a century old.
yeah.
So there's constantly going to be technology that's, changing, and people have to adapt to it. And I think it's just part of the business, and you gotta learn. You gotta take it with a grain of salt too. It's like you gotta look out for the scams and all that, and you gotta, just again use your. There's no shame in spending money on promoting yourself, and I think it's just about using it wisely, in my opinion, and how you do that. So yeah, but there's a, I was, the guitar player Bumblefoot, you know him?
Hmm.
So like he's from plays with Guns N' Roses, I think. But I saw some quote from him on some page the other day, and it was just like, all this stuff about how musicians are basically like merch salespeople and Spotify and all this stuff. And I was like a little, I love the dude. I like his playing, and I'm somewhat of a fan. But I was a little like, all right, he was, he kind of basically just complaining that Spotify, like, doesn't pay people enough. And it's like, yeah, but we've known this for basically like over a decade at this point. So there's no need to complain about it now. It's like you got to adapt. And yeah, if you got, it means you got to sell extra merch, go sell extra merch, you know? So that's what you got to do, you know?
Yeah, you're right. Complaining about Spotify and payments and stuff like that is very much screaming into the void these
Yeah,
days.
exactly. There's no point, you know?
Mm. Well, of course, you mentioned it already as well, but I want to go over it again. Making music, releasing it, that's just one of the many bows to your many strings to your bows. So
Yeah, yeah.
tell me what, and this might be a bit unfair, so by all means, dance around if you want. What aspect
Yeah,
of your
sure.
professional life, be it your personal music, teaching, composing for other projects, which of them do you find most creatively satisfying?
Oh, boy, this is hard
Mm.
because I'm like such a jack of all trades. So I
Mm.
get enjoyment out of basically all of them. It's hard for me to say which I enjoy most. I mean, in recording music, there is a level of there's a level of like I don't want to say frustration, but there's like a lot of trial and error in recording. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of like, or like something, you know, something could just go wrong in the middle of a session. Your computer freezes or something. You know, you never know with stuff like that. So there is this always this, and also it's like, you know, you're a lot of times I'm working with a producer or somebody that's basically got, you know, or do like I said, I was, you know, mixing and mastering a song for someone. So it's like they ultimately have the end say. I'm going back and forth forever. And you know, sometimes if you go back, you know, you can get in your head a little bit like, oh, they'll really like this and this is really awesome. And then you send it to them and they're like, oh, like that. No, that wasn't what I was thinking at all. Redo this, you know, and then you're like, oh. So there's that kind of stuff that happens in the recording world, which I say will, uh, you know, again, it's you get used to it and all that. You got to have a little more patience. But I guess my top passion is live performance. I mean, I just love playing gigs. I love playing with a band, interacting with others musically, and doing the whole, you know, crowd experience. And we're all there to kind of share in the joy of music kind of thing. And so that's where I get my most pleasure, I would say. Although that also comes with its own can of worms. There's all the traveling. There's all the, you know, sleeping in a van and blah blah blah,
Mm.
starving yourself, barely making any money because you're spending it all on expenses, kind of thing. So they each come with their set of things. But I would say the pleasure I get out of live performance is superior to that of when I finish a recorded track, let's say, you know.
But
So,
ultimately, nothing you do ever feels like a job, so to speak.
no, definitely not. I feel like I'm so lucky to call myself a full-time musician, you know, and uh, you know, I sometimes, and this is something I like to express to people. I mean, we talk about it with our band all the time because it's like, again, you got to keep a fresh mental state with some of this stuff because we live in this like comparative world now with social media, right? Where you see someone on social media and they're doing something that you would love to do or whatever, and you can't do it, you know? So it's like sometimes I'll go, you know, and I fall down the rabbit hole and all that. I go research guitar players and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe they can play like that. I wish I could do that. Or man, they're so lucky they got to tour with this person or whatever, you know. So it's wise to just kind of remind yourself of the things that you have every day, you know. So it's like the fact that I don't have to clock into a 9 to 5 job and I've figured out a way currently to just kind of live on my own and been doing it for, you know, what in my early 20s, you know, now I'm 37, but in my early 20s I was anxious and I didn't even think I didn't even realize, and looking back at it I realized how anxious and nervous I was because I didn't know like if I could do it, if I could. And now I've been doing it for, you know, 15 years and I'm like, you know what, if there's a lack, if there's a lack of gigs or a lack of work for a month or two, I'm like, you know what? I've been through this. It's been long enough that I know that I'll pull myself out of it and I'll find some gigs and I'll find work and I'll do whatever I got to do. So I kind of look at it like a, you know, it's just kind of like a fun life game. It's like, you know, life is way more interesting and exciting when you just kind of have to figure things out for the next couple months as opposed to just going through the mundane like wake up 8 a.m., drive to work 9 to 5, come home, eat dinner, go to watch some TV, go to like I couldn't. That's just life's just not for me. Not that there's anything wrong with that life. I mean,
Of
there's a
course.
part of me that loves the routine and the consistency, but uh, you know, I just
It's just not for you.
yeah, it's just not for me. I'm just, you know, I'm a creative type, so that's where I'm at, you know.
Yeah, talking about being a creative type, perhaps one of the things I find most interesting and learning a lot about you in recent times is obviously the video game scores, the
Yeah.
composing video game soundtracks. As a personal lover of that, a great game is made by its soundtrack a lot of the time. So I have to ask, where did that interest ever come to you? Was it something you were initially interested in, or did you fall into it?
Yeah. So I would say video games. I guess it was a thought in the back of my mind, maybe, but I had always been intrigued by film composing. You know, I always wanted to be like a film composer, or not always, but once I like, I started playing music when I was like 14, 15. So probably by the time I was like 17, 18, when I had started taking legit lessons and playing in the high school jazz band and all that stuff, starting to have these realizations of like, oh wow. And then in college, I remember there was, I took, I was a radio production major, so did the whole film thing. That was part of my final project was to make a 20-minute long short film and all that. And so that was where I started to get into that. And I've always thought of like being a film composer, composing for visuals and all that. I just
Mm.
think that's one of the top, there's just so much emotion behind those songs or compositions, I should say. And, and it really, it's just so awesome to me. I just love that. So video games is like the next best thing to me, I guess. I sort of just fell right into it. I mean, it was a total kind of luck chance sort of situation where just this a buddy of mine who I'd met through the music scene in the Northeast over here, just through like music festivals, met him at music festivals. We formed some kind of we didn't really know each other that well, but we formed some fun musical relationship, and he would sit in with my band and I would, play with him every now and then. And then I don't know, I never heard from the guy for like, a couple years. And then I don't know
Mm.
where he's like, hey, I need a guitar player for a recording session. And I had no idea what the session was. And I was just like, yeah, I can do it. I'll come by. And I go to his place and he's like, here's what we're doing. We're recording a score for a video game. And, it was just me, him, and another guy. And we sat there with 2 straight days, 48 hours. We recorded about 75 minutes of music. And uh, from there, it just kind of snowballed. He was just like, you know what, this was really good. And it's so, cause I'm a multi-instrumentalist. So I brought my banjo, my ukulele and my lap steel guitar and all these instruments. And he's just like, if you could play all these instruments, I'm going to bother you like way more than you want me to. And I was like, all right, go ahead. And then sure enough, it just kind of snowballed from there. So
What was that game?
that game was called Snow Runner, which is a truck driving game. It's big in Russia, actually. So you're like hauling, logs across the Russian
Yeah,
terrain and all that. It's kind of like a meditative game in a way too, because it's very slow moving, but like, you gotta be what's the word? You have to have good control of the world that you're in, and all that kind of stuff.
those
Um,
games are super popular these days all over.
yeah, yeah, yep, yep, yeah. Like a buddy of mine is obsessed with this game where you just power wash. I don't
Power
know what
Wash
it's called, but you
Simulator.
just power wash houses. Yeah, there's something to it, I guess. I mean,
My wife is also obsessed with that exact same game, Power Wash
Oh wow,
Simulator.
that's funny. That's funny.
So to date, then, I have to ask, is there a particular video game score that you are most proud of having worked on?
Yeah, I mean, I've been quite happy with all of them. I would say that
Mm.
the Evil Dead was probably one of the bigger ones I got to work on, and that one was like a huge feat for me because I took on a lot of responsibility. And in the game, you could play as two different, you could play as the good guy or the bad guy. So I did like the whole bad guy side, and then like the main producer and like a couple other composers did the other half. So had this whole half of music all, they hired the actual composer for Evil Dead to do like the main title theme and all that. So it was a cool project to be involved in, and it was a big, it's a very niche uh, movie series, but the
Mm.
fans are hardcore, and so it was cool. And the cool thing about that was it was like this cool orchestral kind of horror music, which I had never done before. And then we also had these little in-game missions that they would, DLC missions they would come out with. And so I got to do music for like the trailers for that and the missions themselves, which we made like some heavy metal songs and stuff. So it's just a wide spectrum of a musical palette there, which was so cool to cover all these different uh, things. Usually in a game, it's like, hey, we want the music to be like this, and that's that. which is totally cool also. But to have a big spectrum like that was a super cool thing, and it was a well received game. It seemed so. That was
Mhm.
probably my favorite thing to be involved in.
I love it. I played that game loads. I had no
Nice.
idea you're involved. Now I do.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, if you ever play as the demon, that's all that music is made. So
Okay, going back to your personal projects and potential releases,
yeah.
give me a bit of a rundown if you can, kind of what you're working on right now, what we might see in 2024 from you.
Yeah, so I am currently taking some of the music from my album, Music That Makes No Sense, and trying to get a band together for live performance. So,
Mm,
old buddy of mine from college, I've been talking to Lay, who's a drummer, and he has a buddy who's a bass player. So we've just been meeting as the three of us, trying to work out if we can play it as a trio, power trio kind of thing. So just guitar, bass, and drums, and trying to use some electronic elements to fill up spaces and make some cinematic type of things. I always like to mix like that, rock and fusion and jazz with like the cinematic elements. That's kind of like my style, I would say. So that's my goal this year is to kind of get the live thing together and do a show probably in New York City, hopefully maybe in the fall. So going to be spending, the next couple months kind of working on that. And, I have another band as well that's like an awesome
mm.
three-part harmony style group, kind of like Eagles, Fleetwood Mac, Crosby, Stills, Nash, classic rock kind of style. And we're kind of like trying to do big things and tour and stuff like that. So between those two acts, I mean, that keeps me quite busy. And then, hopefully just working on some more video game stuff. It always comes in, you know, uh, at some point early in the year. So probably in the next couple of weeks, get started on a new project of sorts. And, so that's kind of what I have in store. The main thing, again, just getting the live band together
Yeah.
and hopefully another album from me. I plan to hopefully do an album a year. That's my goal because I just have so many wacky ideas up there. I want to rival Frank Zappa if I can with the amount of albums I put out. So
You got some work to do there, but I love
yeah,
it. I
lots of
love it.
work. I don't know if it's doable, but I'll try.
Well, the clue is in volume 1 with your debut album, isn't it?
Yeah, yep, yep.
Okay, right. This is Ozzy Osbourne, and in his head are randomized cards of everything and anything,
Ah,
including submissions from other bands and artists. What we do now is pull out some random ones, and you answer them. Yeah.
all right.
Okay, so this is a straightforward one. Is punk dead?
Is punk dead?
Hmm.
I don't think so. I mean, I'm not really a huge punk guy. I don't know, but I do have a buddy who's in like a punk band, and I'm actually like a big fan of his band. They're called Slugwater. Check them out. Um, and so I don't think it's dead. I don't think any music's really dead. I think everything has just been sort of what's the word? Everything's like a niche now, right? It's just like how
Yeah.
the whole world works. Like you don't have to buy
Hmm.
it from the big companies. You can seek out little things. So I think it's not that it's just that things are not as visible in the mainstream, So I don't think anything's really dead. I just think you have to search for it a little harder these days. That's my thought.
Fair enough. All right, next one. What is something that never fails to make you smile?
Oh boy, Seinfeld. I mean, there you go.
Hmm. Big
I could re
Seinfeld
I could
fan.
rewatch Seinfeld for till the rest of my life. I mean, it's just the most genius show, I think, and everything is relatable to every human being on the planet, if you ask me, in that show.
That
And
is it. It's got to be arguably the number 1 show that has such a Marmite view. E.g., you either love it or you tend to just hate it.
yeah, yeah, it's true. It's true. There's not a lot of middlers.
Mm. Okay. What country or culture has the best food in your opinion?
Oh boy, that's tough. I'm gonna have to go with Italy on this one. I love
Okay.
Italian food. Um, I am
Pasta,
Greek,
pizza, everything.
but yeah, pasta. I mean, penne vodka. That's like my number one food. But I'm also Greek. I love Greek food too. It's hard to say, but I think Italian is my favorite culture and my favorite food. I would say.
Well, I am Irish, not English. We don't really, neither Ireland or England are well known for great food. But on a personal level, Greece, it's probably up there. It'd probably be, if not number 1, it'd be my number 2 favorite
Oh
food.
wow, wow, wow,
Absolutely wonderful,
awesome.
wonderful.
Yep.
Okay, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh man, it's been a lot of them, but
Mhm. Or even if you think of a really good one, I suppose.
There's actually a couple. One of them, I don't know if I was told directly, but it's a quote that I heard about Bob Dylan's. I think Bob Dylan's grandma maybe told him that you know practice kindness because everyone out here is fighting the hardest battle, right? Meaning just existing on this planet is enough of a battle for every human being that you got to just be patient with people, and everyone's got their own thing, and you got to respect other people's. I just thought that was like that was kind of like a mind blowing, like, wow, she's so right. Like everyone is out here just fighting this existence because it's
Mm.
just so bizarre that we're all here and we're all dealing with it in our own way, whether we know it or not. So um, that was big for me. And just the other day, somebody gave me a great piece of advice, which was, I was just thinking about again, just how people view this social media thing and how they approach quote unquote making it or becoming known or whatever. And somebody gave me a great piece of advice, which was, you don't want to be you don't want to chase that $1 million deal for the rest of your life, right? There, like
Mm.
he's in the real estate business, so he's like, yeah, I know people that have been chasing that big deal. They're gonna finally close that big deal. 50 years they've been working, and they're gonna get $10 million all in one shot. And it's like, it's never going to happen. You're better off chasing a million deals that are each worth $10, And I just thought that was a very great way to think of it. Like you're better off just kind of growing something slow and steady and just like that, slowly, nice and easy, and
Step
not
by
going
step.
for that big dream that and then it never happens and then you're totally let down so I thought that was a good piece of advice that I got recently of like, try to see things like that. Do a million deals that are $10 each and you'll be just
Mm.
satisfied. So
Yeah, I like that. I do like that. That's good.
yeah.
Okay, got one more for you. What is something you find so boring, but others tend to love?
Oh boy. I'm gonna say, since I'm a musician, I'm gonna say just like mundane practicing is like, I find it to be exhilarating. I could sit there and just play scales, like stuff that like isn't tech quote unquote musical. I could just play scales and chords and just sit there on my guitar for hours. And I know a lot of people don't have the patience for that and would probably, again, like you said, maybe get bored after a couple minutes of doing it. So yeah, that's like a pretty mundane thing. Other than that, I would say, as I mentioned earlier, I think just like, at the end of the night when I've worked all day, it's 11 o'clock at night, I'll sit down and I'll watch some TV, but you won't find me sitting on the couch at 3 p.m. That's for sure. So I'd say
Mm.
that might be a like sitting around just lounging, watching TV is, unless there's like a good, a big football fan, American football fan. So I like to watch some football from time to time, but
Oh, so you do like that.
so that's about the extent of me relaxing on the couch. But um, yeah, most of the time I would say it's something like you won't find me kind of just lounging around unless it's late in the day or but yeah, I think the practicing thing that's like I could do it all day every day. Just I never get bored of it. So
Well, considering how busy you are constantly, thank you very much for giving me a time in this regard.
of
We'll
course.
leave it there. Basically, watch this space. Your 2024 promises to be very, very busy. And of course, getting this live band together and getting out and playing some shows seems like the most exciting thing to be happening right now in your world. Ryan, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for making the time for me as well. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to see more content like this, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It is gratefully appreciated. You can find us over at gbhbl.com, our full website where reviews, news, and so much more goes up daily. We're also on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, at GBHBL. Just search for GBHBL and you will find us out there. We also have merchandise on sale. You can access the shop via the website.